Alright, here's another video game to film. This one has been announced several times, but has never been adopted or made yet. But I'm sure many producers are gonna eventually find it and make it into a movie. It's Soul Calibur. Now, Soul Calibur is a basic fighting game. It's kind of different from some of the other fighting games because when I play Mortal Kombat, mostly all I just see is people beating each other with their own fists and then spawning fireballs. In Soul Calibur, it's a different story. Instead, you use swords and other varied weapons and just beat the crap out of each other. Now, the vague story behind all of this is there are two swords. One, Soul Calibur, and which is, I don't know, probably good. But they do explain that the other one, Soul Edge, is obviously evil. Because one character, a knight named Siegfried, became Nightmare and started wielding it. Then after he died, Nightmare came back as a separate entity, whereas Siegfried remained as a human. But other than that, all the stories are incredibly varied. They all have like their certain backstories, their certain goals, and that's fine, but it doesn't really serve much of a purpose if they're just going to beat the crap out of each other. For instance, one of my favorite characters to use in Soul Calibur is, when I played Soul Calibur 2 and Soul Calibur 3, it was, a staff-wielding guy, Kulik, because his combos are so easy to pull off. Plus, in Soul Calibur 3, you can pull off this certain dash combo where it can strike the enemy at the head and strike at the feet before they can react. Now, Soul Calibur added some really interesting elements. Some of them can be completely useless. The most useful one, which everybody will have definitely used, is throwing enemies. Now, the throwing enemy is meant to break an enemy's guard, so if somebody's blocking your attack, all you can just do is get close to them, grab them, and toss them around. These do somewhat a good, decent amount of damage, but I discovered that sometimes the computer players can see past this. For instance, when you try and throw when nobody's close to you, you open yourself up for an attack, plus enemies can duck or escape your throw if you try it sometimes. The other elements are kind of useless because they're kind of difficult to pull off. The first one is guard attacks, or guard break attacks, where you can basically automatic an attack can break an enemy's guard if you don't spam them long enough. And then there's the unblockable attacks, where no matter what, the enemy can't guard when you attack. The problem is they take very, very long to execute. And when that happens, the enemy would obviously see that and counterattack. Another useless element that I barely use is guard impact, where it's kind of a last minute block, which kind of stuns the enemy and opens them up for future attacks. I know that in Soul Calibur 3 they did start the create a character option, whereas at first they just adopted different characters from different games. For instance, the GameCube version of Soul Calibur 2 has Link. And for Soul Calibur 4 they had Darth Vader and Yoda, which kind of baffles me. But they added this option to create your own character, but there's a big flaw to that. Because all these characters that you make are basic cardboard cutouts of each other. And you only or at least for Soul Calibur 3, you only choose, what you do is you just choose a sex, then you choose a class, which determines only 5 different weapon types, or styles or whatever. Then you clothe the character in whatever you want, and that determines their orientation to be either good or evil. But the problem is that there are only about 32 voices for all the characters. There isn't a lot. I'd probably call it the Valkyrie profile problem because in the Valkyrie profile game you can spawn undead, the chosen dead on Harriar, but they still have practically the same voices, so there's only 8 voices in all, even though they look perfectly different. The flaw with the create your own character is you have only custom weapon options and 2 soul options. And that only depends on the class that you play as. For instance, if you play as a monk, if you get all the skills for them, you can only use 3 custom weapons: the nunchucks, the staff, and the greave edge, which is basically a kickboxing weapon, and 2 soul weapons, which is the soul of Keelik and the soul of Maxi, who is somebody who wields nunchucks. But the soul weapons, all the actions are exactly like the character that it's based off of. That's the problem I have with some of it. I don't know if they improved on it in Soul Calibur 4. The one thing I did notice is that you can pull off some kind of critical finisher, which reminds me way too much of Mortal Kombat's fatalities and his instant kills. Well, that's all I can think of for Soul Calibur, but I'll talk about what I know about the film or what it was going to be, or what it might be. So, see you later.